Welcome to the latest Land of 10 Iowa Facebook Live session. This is for the Illinois Game Week. I am Bobby Gesse.
I'm Scott Dochterman. Pleased to be with you today.
Yeah, we might as well be calling this one the What Iowa Needs to Do to Get the Fan Base Feeling Happy and Kirk Ferentz and the coaching staff off the players' backs. Because the list of things is long. I think that this team needs to improve and wants to improve, and to not just end the two-game losing streak, but to feel like they kind of got things back to where they were before Big Ten play started.
It's what's funny about it is the list is long, and we know that there's a lot of issues going on with this team, but we also know that they're only 9 points away from being undefeated too. So it's kind of this weird situation. But I think most of it's correctable, but I think it all starts with offensive line. If Iowa can't block at the point of attack, if they can't secure the zone, the outside zone, inside zone, then it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be an uphill climb for this team. But if it can, then I think this team's got a puncher's chance at just about every game. So it's really weird, straddling the line here between being pretty good and having some issues.
Yeah, it's not just, a few points. I mean, it's basically one play with Penn State. And then Michigan State, they give up 14 points in the first three possessions from Michigan State, and that pretty much did them in, no matter how you want to look at it. That many points down, so it's just a little bit here, a little bit there. Paul says do a lot of short passes. Not necessarily a bad idea for this team. They need to find a way to move the ball, especially in those early downs. That's been a killer for them the last 2 weeks. And a short passing game can help get you out of things when your running game is basically non-existent, like Iowa's has been for the last 2 weeks, because you got to find a way to move the ball to second manageable, specifically third and shorts. And, running yards for 0, 1, -2 yards really doesn't help you with anything in that regard. Short passing plays, and especially stuff that you might be able to work Akram Wadley into, I think, could definitely be a bonus for this team going forward.
Yeah, I would suggest getting him in the passing game at all costs, whether that's in the slot, whether that's in swing passes, screen passes. Do something to get him in space. If you get Akram Wadley in space, you've got to like your chances of him picking up some sort of yardage. If you don't, then you're struggling. It's going to be a grind. And Gary Cato says, why do we always run on first down? It's not quite as extreme as it was. I would say it's probably in the neighborhood of 2/3 of the time they run on first down. Now, one thing we've got to look at is over the last 2 games, their field position's been really poor. And when they're getting the ball inside the 10 or inside the 15, you do want to kind of establish that. And you can't just throw and punt because then it'll kill your defense. So you do need to run a little bit. I think right now, the problem is the execution of the running game. When a running game fails, it looks predictable as heck, and it also just looks like you're not doing anything. So if Iowa can run the football, which it has to do, then it won't look as predictable, and then that'll open up the pass.
And I wrote a story last week that kind of touched on first down play breakdown. I think it surprises most fans before you factor in anything from Michigan State last week. It's basically 50-50. North Texas was really run heavy because in the second half they just tried to run the ball to end the game, but it wasn't as skewed as people kind of thought it was. And so I think it's just more of Iowa's history plus the plays you remember them not working for the most part, have been those run plays on first down, especially the last 2 weeks. So it's been a little bit better, I think, than you imagine. But if the run game gets going, I think it's something that comes off the table for a lot of people. Paul says keep a guard on their wide receiver all the time, especially the team's best wide receiver. Davis destroyed them last week. And his first 2 series, I forget the stats off the top of my head, but I wrote it earlier this week, had something like 5 catches for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't want to oversimplify the game, but that almost decided it. For a game against 2 teams where the average score is like 16-14 over the span of the last 7 times they played, those 2 first quarter touchdowns all but basically decided it, just with the way defense goes and the way the game reverted after that. Is not Penn State, Michigan State, scored, and they only got points when they started in Iowa's half of the field, and then Iowa came back with a couple chances to score, but it still wouldn't have been enough with what was already done.
Right. The jailbreak, Bruce mentions. Yes, the jailbreak It's a pretty good play. They've run it twice this year. Ken O'Keefe used to run it all the time, so that's a good play to run. I think it did run on first down, picked up some good yards. I would suggest running it, if not every game, certainly every other game. It's been effective. So
yeah, I would almost say you might want to pull that out almost every game at this point because you've had success with it twice. That falls into kind of that short passing game situation where you need something to get them going, and throwing that out, it's had success so far. Part of the reason is because they haven't overused it, but you might want to turn to it, have that in your short passing game packages, maybe a little bit higher up there, especially against somebody where you see that might be able to work against.
And it's a Ken O'Keefe staple. He used to run it all the time when he was the OC, so I'd expect to see more of it. The problem is if you run more of it, then more people are going to expect it. But Williams says quarterback drops back 5 to 7 yards and hands the ball off, who gets tackled consistently for a loss. Why does this happen over and over again? I don't see many draw plays getting several yard losses. So I guess I'm struggling to find them.
Yeah, basically, this comes down to what's wrong with the running game and how does Iowa fix it, is where we get to. By the end, I've written a couple things, one that just popped up right now on Land of 10 in the last couple of days about the running game. And part of it is, there's an obsession with teams loading the box against them, and that's part of it. Teams are bringing 8, 9 defenders in there, and a lot of that's happening against 2 tight end sets is when you're seeing it the most. Iowa might want to get away from that a little bit. The other part of the factor is they're losing the line of scrimmage battle regardless of the number of guys that the team's throwing at them. If it's just a 4 down lineman front, for 2 weeks in a row, they've been losing that battle consistently. So that doesn't help them. The one thing that stood out to me was let's take the touchdown run this past week with Michigan State. Akram Wadley goes 9 yards. It's 3 receiver set. There's 6 guys in the box defensively. The numbers game isn't advantageous to the offense, but where it's been for Iowa for the last 2 weeks, that feels like a win at this point. The line goes out and blocks it perfectly, clears a nice hole, easily 3 to 4 yards for anybody rushing the football, irregardless if they're Akram Wadley, some guy out of the street, whatever. So you have a hole there for running back to go to. That's what Iowa wants to get. Wadley then makes 2 defenders miss, which is kind of the bonus of him, which gets you into the end zone. That's all Iowa wants, is a hole, a running back to go through, getting at least 4 yards, and then if the running back can make somebody miss, even better, the touchdown's the bonus. And the ways I think they can get themselves there is they might want to run more out of those 3 wide receiver looks, or maybe you flex out the tight end, because that's when the defense has shown that they'll move guys out of the box to cover the potential for the pass there. It's part of the reason teams run out of the spread, especially, not the best example, but the old Baylor teams. If you left the box empty for them, they'd run it all day because they wanted to dictate whether you loaded the box or not and take your mismatch elsewhere. But for Iowa, if there's less guys in the box, it creates better running lanes, less guys to block. It's a little bit easier of a job for a team that wants to jumpstart the rushing attack. I think you do that. I think you can get Akram, as we've kind of said, short passes, things like that. That's kind of your best way to kind of, I think, jumpstart it before you can kind of start fixing other things.
Iowa last year ran out of 3 wide receiver set about 8% of the time. They generally passed. That was a problem and predictability and tendency. This year, it's right around a third they're running out of the 3 wide receiver set, and that's huge. As Bobby alluded to, you have more space for your running back. I've had an issue for a while with Iowa going 22, 2 tight ends, fullback, running back, and running from it. Last year, it didn't work until the Nebraska game. That was the only game that it actually worked because you're telling everybody, hey, we're running, and we're going to be physical here, and we're bigger and better than you, and if you're not, then it doesn't work. So I think right now they've got an issue with that. How do they correct it? I think it's, they're just going to have to – it's simple. They're going to have to block better. If they don't block better, you're going to forget it. They're going to have to sustain blocks. They're going to have to, the zone is getting chipped apart. They're getting blown off the ball in the interior, and it's really starting. And it's not so much being overwhelmed. It's not 8 and 9 man fronts. The numbers game as much as it is mano y mano. If that can happen, then they'll be fine. But right now, being fine is not 19 yards against Michigan State.
No, I mean, you can even go back to the Penn State game. And overall, for the rushing this entire game hasn't been up to par. North Texas is the only time I think you grade it at a B or higher. Everything else has been at best a C, and a lot of games has been lower than that.
Yeah, I mean they rank 107th right now in the country at less than 3.4 yards per carry. I've used this stat, and I will use it every single day. When Iowa runs for 100 yards, they're 23-1 since 2015. When they don't run for 100 yards, they're 0-8. It's that simple. You run the ball effectively, Iowa wins. You don't run the ball effectively, Iowa loses. It's more so than anything you can do in the passing game. It's about how you run.
Yeah, and Joe says they need more Torn. And you know what? I think they do need to use not just him, but maybe Ivory Kelly Martin too. James Butler went down, and he was kind of the 1B. And I haven't run the numbers on it, but it's kind of seems to me they haven't used the kind of now two-headed number 2 guy, not as much as they used James Butler before. And one of the ways I think that hurts Iowa is you saw them playing Akram Wadley in the slot to start the season. Maybe you get him jet sweeps. That's another way to get him in space. Short passing games in play there. He could be somebody involved in a screen game there, not just out of the backfield. It not just gives you another option at running back to see what's going on, but it also frees up Akram to maybe get him some plays in space, especially if you're going to face a team down the road that does what Michigan State or Penn State did, and it's just going to throw everybody towards the line of scrimmage just to sell out to stop the running game.
Yeah. All right, what do we got? Torrin Young, yeah, he would have been but the thing was, last week, I don't know if it was just a conscious effort that Michigan State attacked the line of scrimmage so effectively and got so much push that Torrin Young would have no chance. He's just not quick enough. Ivory Kelly Martin is, and certainly Akram is, that maybe you can make a move or one or two here and hit it. This is the type of week where he'll play.
Yes.
Physical style of football suits him. So I think you'll see him this week.
Next 2 questions from Danny and Gary, kind of on the same topic. Being predictable, and what do we think about the play calling? Any offense is going to look predictable, and the play calling is going to look really bad when you're 3 and out, consistently struggling to move the ball, and that's where Iowa's been for 2 weeks. It may not look like it, but Brian Ferentz has tried to change some things up to try to get the offense going. It hasn't worked. So that, you might not see it, and honestly, it takes a second or third rewatch on our end to see some of that stuff too. So it's not something you're going to notice on game day there. I don't think it's so much predictable as in the past. We talked about first down a little bit, not as bad as it was before. Scott mentioned, they're doing more things running the ball wise out of 3 receiver sets. It's not like it was in the past. I think some of that's the default response. It's just when there is an execution, it's all going to look really bad, and that's kind of where it sits for this team. I think this is an interesting point for Brian Ferentz because this is the first time he's faced sustained struggles as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, and so it's now what do you do to help solve that? Because getting the players to play better is the big part of the issue, but part of your job as a play caller and a coach is to put players in the best position to make plays, to scheme things. And if what's working or you think is going to work doesn't work, you have to find a different way to make it work, and that has to be just as important as getting the players to make all the blocks up front.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's see. Kiefer says we need more play action and trust Stanley to throw the ball. You set up the run by establishing the pass. There's some truth to that, especially when you got 8-9 guys in the box. That would be helpful. But a lot of they've been hamstrung by field position, and in fact they're not really running very many plays. That's also another thing. I mean, they've ran around 100 plays total the last 2 weeks. I think it's 101, and then you had
Penn State right
against them. So they've been in trouble offensively here, I think. So. So I think play action works, especially in this offense. And when the running game is working, play action works well. But you can't. You've got to make sure you're running the ball to make it work long term. You can make it work a couple of plays, but not the whole game.
I like the concept of passing to kind of set up the running a little bit. And in the story on how to get the run game going, I wanted to devote more space to that because that's something you see especially in the NFL now. New England is one of those teams that's really good at it. They use Brady early to build a lead, and then they run at the end to just kind of close out the game, win it, run down the clock. Problem is that's not Kirk Ferentz. He's going to want to run the ball, and he's going to want to keep running the ball. And he said as much today when someone kind of brought up to him, maybe passed him a little bit more. So it's a good option, but it's an option that just at the school is never really on the table too much. Even if it is just running, just passing to set up the run, he wants to just be 3 yards in a cloud of dust in the modern version of it and kind of go from there. Jake says not being able to deep balls killed the team. They need to hit that more often, and we may not be talking about saving a season. Well, I don't think he's talking about saving a season right now. It's just been 2 losses, but I don't think Jake's going to kind of like the response. there's a lot on the table. And yeah, overthrowing balls has been a problem here. And I know it's a big talking point, but of all the issues that's out there on the table, it's down the list by a while. Decision-making wise, Nate Stanley's making a lot of right decisions, throwing the ball to the right guys. The one thing he's consistently doing wrong is overthrowing them, and that's something that comes in time. That's more of a graduate level guy who's coming in as a quarterback issue to solve. You want to hit more on him, but that's never going to be something where you complete 75% of your passes on. And like in the one this week, everyone thinks back to where he overthrew Matt Vandenberg. They scored on that touchdown on that drive. That one didn't hurt them. It's something they want to get better at. And it is one of the things Nate needs to work on. But there's other things that are higher up on that list. And for him specifically, I say ball security, and for the offense as a whole, it's running the ball and finding a way to get Akron Wiley to make plays. Because the more he gets into the offense, the more plays he makes, the better off this offense is.
I talked to Marvin McNutt and Keenan Davis that last night. I was on a show with them, and they blame the wide receivers that they're not running hard enough, they're not running fast enough, and sometimes they need to lay out for the ball a little bit more. I trust their opinions. I think some of them have been a little overshot, no doubt about it. But I also think that there's times when they need to get an extra gear in there and get to those balls or lay out for them. So, I'm not going to give Stanley as much of a problem as other people are. The ones that you see are the ones where the receiver gets past the defender and then it's too far. I saw some really good throws in the second half. I mean, he hit like a back shoulder fade sort of with Amir Smith-Marset. I think it was more accidental, but then there was one with Nick Easley, a longer pass on the sideline. I thought it was terrific. One pass that kind of got overlooked was to T.J. Hawkinson, where he was crossing the 20 yards down the field, and the defender was right there, and he hit him on his back hip, and made a nice catch, but certainly a great throw. So I really like the way this is going down, and he's got such an incredible arm. One thing you got to remember is he's a new quarterback. He's got receivers that have varying levels of speed, so sometimes misjudge that, and that just takes time and practice. I think they've got a real find there. I think they're going to be really good there, just not right now today.
It'll take time. You got to remember he's a first-year starter. I think he threw 9 total passes last year. Something like that. A lot went wrong with the passing game last week. Deep balls didn't connect a few times. You had pass protection as a problem for him. You had some drop passes. You had a couple that were off from him, accuracy there. It was a bunch of things coming together there. And that does tie into a question we have from Jerry on the comment on the impact like a pass pro has on Nate Stanley. When it's getting in his face, it's causing problems. There's a lot of times he some of those overthrows down the field, he gets pressure in his face and just throws it to where nobody can catch it. And for him, he knows his arm strength. A lot of that's down the field. There are a couple times each game where his throw, where it looks like he's overthrown somebody, is actually just getting rid of the ball all the way down the field. That's a problem. When he has time to throw, for the most part, it's been pretty good for him. It's just when it's not consistently there that adds to the problem of everything else with the offense. So, when he has time, and he's shown the ability with the pass rush coming into his face to step up into a throw and hit a couple passes, I think that's something you have to like long-term too. But yeah, I think you'll see him play better the better the passing and blocking gets in front of him.
Right. Let's see here. Sandy says everything they need to improve on. Yeah, I agree. They need to improve on
Somebody's still struggling from the loss from Saturday.
Yeah, right. Christopher, if they played like they did against Penn State every week, they would win every game. Yeah, probably. I really, here's a couple of things to think about. One is Michigan State and Iowa are made from the same cookie cutter. They believe in the same philosophy, the same style of play, and their success level. I mean, Michigan State had a very poor year last year. They're better than that. I don't know that they're great. But you go on the road in the Big Ten, you can't turn the ball over. Ball security to me is number one with Nate Stanley, and that's when he was running up in the pocket, it was a freak turnover, but he did have a receiver open. That's what he saw, or he could have ran it in. So I think that's part of it there. You're going to get everybody's best shot most of the time. I mean, and Penn State was a terrific game for them, but this wasn't a feel-good loss, so I think that's why people are taking it so hard.
Yeah, and Dale wants to know if they're still thinking about a bowl game. I honestly don't think Iowa truly thinks about bowl games too much. However, it's more of a fan base kind of thing, not just Iowa, but across the board. I would be freaking out about this team not making a bowl game. If I'm in the fan base, they'll hit the 6-win mark and be eligible for it. I wouldn't be worried about it right now. If the running game continues to be a problem post-bye week, then you might want to have a different kind of conversation.
Right.
But for where they're at right now, I wouldn't be freaking out too much about that.
Right. Let's see. So Laura says go Illinois.
Whoa, we got an invasion on the board, and it's not from one of my immediate family members,
Yeah.
which might be the biggest upset. Coach has to change his game from Mike, and that's a little bit of it too. We talked about that changing with the scheme, and thanks, Mike, for the love, because we know Bruce doesn't have it from 2 comments lower. So
Yeah, I know it's kind of harassing.
Yep.
Colleen, Iowa's not protecting Nate.
Nope. Not as well enough as they could be.
But better than what they did with T.J. Beathard last year.
Yep.
It looked like he was, strapped against a wall and getting beat by, baseball bats. Gloria, just believe in the University of Iowa Hawkeyes. Go Hawkeyes. Jerry, comment on the lack of consistency from number 19. I must be on defense.
I'm thinking so as
well. Is 37 the answer? I think yes, if he's healthy enough. Miles actually played probably the best game I saw him play last week. But 37 is a better player, and he's got more upside. And if it was up to me, if Brandon Snyder is able to go, and I don't think this week he'll be able to play the whole game.
No.
But if he can against Northwestern or Minnesota, make him your free, make Amani your strong, because that's going to be your combo next year anyway.
Yeah, went into our comments with the Brandon Snyder kind of expected to play story today, because people were asking about what the safety starters will be, and I think long-term this year, that is your answer, is Snyder and Hooker, but I don't think you'll see it until after the bye week. Brandon's still getting back. I'm going to be surprised if he starts, because that's kind of just throwing him straight into the deep end. A kid coming off ACL surgery who's recovering faster than a normal person does from that. I think they'll slowly wait him in of the bye week. I think the earliest he starts is the next game after that, which would be Northwestern. And so I think that's the first spot you have for it. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in October, but I don't think it'll be the first week in October.
Yeah, I think they might rotate or something like that. John, Iowa has to score fast and many times to boost confidence. They have to finish Illinois quickly, or the Illini will get stronger. This is kind of my story for today, and we talked about it on the long car trip from East Lansing back home. And that is that, this is kind of could be fool's gold, but it could be a slump buster too. It might feel good at the moment. And that is Iowa should win decisively, and they should score a lot of points. The matter is, will it be just something that they did and hey we scored 51 and then will it matter against Northwestern and Minnesota, or is it okay they really did fix the problem? I don't think we'll know that for a while, but Illinois is not a very good team right now,
and I don't think Illinois is the best team to be playing right now. Sure, odds are you get a win this week. It's you get off the 2 losses, everybody feels better going into the bye week, but everything Scott just mentioned, say the running game looks really good here, they rush for 200 yards, they connect on a couple deep passes. Everything looks great offensively. You still don't know if it works, and the next time you face someone who might be able to give you problems, that maybe it's Northwestern 2 weeks after that, maybe it's Ohio State, maybe it's Minnesota. The next time that pops up where somebody's in a position where they can, cause all the problems that happened the last 2 weeks, I was back at stage 1 on the drawing board, and you're several weeks down the road. I would almost rather see them this week play Northwestern or Minnesota, where you know that if you show improvement there, it is definitely a sign that there's steps in the right direction. This week, it's more of just a question mark, and you're almost trying to read tea leaves to figure out if that's the case or not.
All right. Let's see. Pat says, I see pass protection being better than the last 2 years. Do you think stressing pass protection this year has been affected? If it's affected the offensive line to forget how to run block. I think injuries have played a role. I mean, we forget a lot. I mean, Mike Bucker was a 3-year starter. He started as a sophomore. He's a pretty good player. And then, Boone Myers has had an ankle that he just can't shake. James Daniels doesn't look like the same player to me. I think that's more of the factor. I do agree, though. I think pass protection has been better. I mean, they gave up 30 sacks in each of the last 2 years. And, Beathard had to hold the ball long last year, but that's because they had no wide receivers. Now they have a few more wide receivers. But 2 years ago, he got brutalized, and so in the pass game. So I think they've done a better job there. But I think, forgetting to run block, they need to just do it.
Yeah, Boone Myers said all the right things today, that the ankle's not impacting his play, his mobility, his ability to get off the ball. But I think we're at a point in the season where it's fair to question if it really is impacting him, maybe James Daniels, because he did not look like himself this past week. If there's something that's going on there that either they're not letting on or they're just not kind of being truthful about the impact all of it has on everything with what we've seen from some guys the last week or two, and in the case of Boone for several weeks, just because that ankle's been an issue for him since the basically since practice started.
Yeah, exactly. So, Chad says line play must be getting more consistent. The last 2 weeks has not been time to throw or running lanes open. Yeah, I mean, that's true. They ran for 19 yards, which is the lowest since 2005 against Ohio State. That's pathetic. And they still came within 7 points of winning the game on the road against probably a bowl team in Michigan State. So, but they've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we got a good idea here from Paul, who just says show them some good old football game and make the team come with good ideas. If it was as easy as just putting down the greatest highlights from the Kirk Ferentz era, they would never lose. But it's good. It's good. I like it from a joking point of view. I know Paul might be a little bit serious with that, but I mean, football winning in any sport is not as easy as it always seems. But it can seem pretty easy when you get things rolling, especially like a couple of years ago when all of a sudden it's an undefeated regular season for Iowa. And then when adversity hits, it's kind of like, well, just fix it. It's not working. And the solution is usually never as easy as just the fix it or the execution, which the team is usually bound to say after a loss.
Sure. Let's see. Darren says, run the ball and attack on defense. I think you're going to see that this week. Josh brings up the punter on scholarship and not use him. You know what? I think they're going to use him. I think this will be the week for Ryan Gersandi.
I will say this, though. They're not sitting somebody over there who has a leg that's going to put it 60 yards. If it was, he would have been starting the whole time. I don't want to say temper your expectations on him, but you got to remember he couldn't beat out the guy that's now ranked 11th in the Big Ten in punting for several weeks. So you're hoping for something more consistent. But I don't think if you think that he's going to come in and punt right away and be Ron Caluzzi from last year, I don't think that's realistic either.
Here's what I think with Kirk, though. There's Rastetter has a name. Bruce is his uncle. He's been there all off season. He was, punted a little bit last year, I think, and he was there all spring and all summer, and it was kind of okay, we've got faith in him, and I think now it's time to say, okay, the new guy is 2 to 3 inches taller, is a better athlete, and I think can do more things. So I think in some ways they give the benefit of the doubt to the older player, and I think now is the time to, okay, it's time to turn it on, go with the younger guy.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think if that was the only issue, we would have seen a switch happen by week 2 or 3, though, because at this point you're almost halfway through the season, and it's going to end up, he's not going to use a redshirt Gersandi. You might as well have been kicking him for 1 game, 2 games more, whatever that would have been. With that, if that's the only thing.
3 out of the 5 games have kind of been challenging games for Iowa to do that. I mean, on the road at Iowa State, if you're a true freshman punter and you're backed up on your goal line, and Jack Trice can be a pretty tough place to play. Michigan State's similar, and night game at Kinnick against Penn State, and again the way they were backed up inside. You want somebody just to catch the ball, kick it, if nothing else. So, but this is the type of game that I think you can kind of say, all right, it's homecoming. Illinois, one bad play is not going to get you beat. Probably it'll be a lot of bad plays. So go ahead and give it a shot.
Next question from Kyle says, how good is this Iowa team compared to your expectations in August? Secondary is exceeding it. I think the line's about where we expected on the defensive side. Offensive line is nowhere near where we thought it would be, especially when you want to talk about one blocking. Pass blocking, as we've said, better than the past couple of years. I think Nate Stanley's exceeding my expectations. Wadley, kind of about where we figured, especially where he's the key for a lot of the big plays, and I would like a little bit more out of the wide receivers. The fact that the offensive line is where it is the thing that really surprises me. I think that's number one, and probably will be for everybody.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in lockstep with you. I mean, the secondary thing has been better, especially on the corner position. Not the first quarter last week, notwithstanding. Linebacker has been good, not great. Josie's been terrific last couple of weeks. Defensive line has been pass rush not quite as there, run stopping there. Offensive line is an F-. I mean, compared to where I thought it would be. Now, for everybody else, it might be a C-. But for Iowa, I thought, okay, you're the Joe Moore Award winner. You bring all these guys back. Even you can sustain one loss and still be good. And I've been shocked that they've been as poor as they have in the run. Akram kind of blew me off the table Penn State and Iowa State, and, even this fake high step that got him dinged. And, he's blown me away how good he is. And I think the passing game's better than I thought it was. So, anyway, it's I would say they're record-wise, I probably thought they'd be 4-1. I thought they would win at Michigan State, but it wasn't going to be shocked if they lost. So they're kind of right where they want it, where I thought they would be. It's the offensive line that just blows me away.
And it's a shock to everybody because the line and Wadley was supposed to be what carried this offense through this season. Wadley's done his part, and it's just the line. They've had moments. It just hasn't been enough for them. And even the players, when you hear them talk in a moment of honesty, will lead you in that direction and tell you about it. But it's just one of those things that just hasn't come together yet for them. All right, where are we here? Bill says play calling must improve. Kind of covered that. Once the execution comes around, the people calling about the play calling will probably stop that one. But this is an interesting one. Find the team weakness and improve the performance there based on the previous game. Now here's the problem: the weakness has been the offensive line, and when the line's your problem, that blows everything up because it makes running hard. It makes pass protection hard. It makes it hard to do anything when that's the thing you can't do. And the other factor on top of this is a lot of these guys played last year. Now, they might not be playing in the same positions. Think Sean Welsh. You have Alaric Jackson starting as his first time there, and Boone's moved positions too. But you have enough returning guys with experience playing at multiple spots across the line that even that shouldn't be an issue for you. It's almost as if it's like, how do you solve this? And it's really a head scratcher just because of just the sheer experience that's coming back across the board and the versatility of everybody.
And I think health has played such a weird role up front, and you can't make it an excuse, but you can certainly make it a factor. And let's take Tristan Wirfs, for instance. With all the issues with Ike Bucker, it almost makes sense, hey, let's go ahead and put Tristan Wirfs there. Well, he's been hurt. He missed a lot of time in camp. He was out not last week, but the week before, and so he wasn't going to play even against, I think, Penn State. So to me, if he's healthy, I would say, you know what, let's start it now. Let's make him the right tackle and move Sean Welsh inside because that's where his best position is. Or if Boone Myers was healthy, put him at tackle. Make him your right tackle, and then Sean Welsh inside. But he's not healthy either, and so I think right now that they're kind of hamstrung by that. And some of the other guys are, good, but they're drop offs. Otherwise, they'd be playing. So to me, I would do anything in your power to get Sean Welsh back inside. He's an all Big Ten caliber guard, and if you can have him play guard, it solidifies a lot of the issues right now with the running game, and have somebody on the edge. Problem is you don't have anybody healthy who's good enough. And if Boone, like Kirk said today, if Boone was healthy, he'd be out there every play, because he's that good. And that's the unfortunate part right now.
Yeah, it is. Josh brings up the special teams and goes beyond the punting. Returning, was wondering kind of what Josh Jackson was doing with some of those decisions to field the ball or not. We talked to him today about that, especially the one where he caught it in the end zone. Basically chalked it up to a learning mistake for the kid. He wanted to make a play, and I don't blame him because nothing was going on offense. I think that was the one time you saw in the game that maybe the frustration from the defensive side come through with, we're doing our part. We've stood up and not given up points when we started series in our own side of the 50. Yeah. That was him just trying to press and do too much instead of going, well, if the offense gets the ball in the 20, we've kind of seen what happens there. Maybe I can make a guy miss. I think that's what a lot of that was with him on Saturday.
And plus, it didn't even hurt them because the Michigan State had a penalty.
Yeah.
They had to re-kick anyway. But, generally, and I talked to Marvin and Keenan about this last night, is, when you're in that, 9 to 5 yards and stuff, and you know that the traffic's coming down on you, they want you to go ahead and fair catch it because the worst thing you can do is let it hit the ground and then all of a sudden it rolls to the 2 or 1 or and then, those, and in that spot, that 3 to 5 yards is just killer because then you can't do anything but try to prevent a safety.
Your first down play is a run just to get out of your end zone, and everybody knows it, and it throws off your entire 3 downs.
And you're playing Canadian football. So Gary says, sad you need to improve to beat high school state champ. Okay. Chad says it's too early to push the panic button. The 2 losses are good teams, and there's a lot of season left for the I could not agree more. It's right now it's kind of like a pendulum. Like Iowa went from, hey, they can win the West and go to the playoff to fire the coach, and they're not going to a bowl game, and I don't know what you guys are smoking, that type of thing. I really think that the be patient. There's issues. They need to correct those issues, but there's been issues like this almost every year. Remember last year after North Dakota State, they couldn't run the ball.
Yep.
They had issues there. They had issues.
D-line too, DT.
And it's every year they have some hole they got to plug. So I really do think, though, seriously, this year they're going to get them corrected. Not suggesting they're going to win out, but I think they can win another 4, 5, 6 games.
Yeah, it's like we said earlier, if the running game's still a problem by the end of the Northwestern game, then we might want to talk about something different. But for now, I really wouldn't. Cully wants to play slug football, which Iowa wants to do every day it can. Delbert still thinks good things will come this year. And Logan asked a little bit about moving Walsh to guard. Scott just covered it a little bit. If Iowa had a healthy tackle, I think you'd see him play him there. And Tristan's been a little banged up, and Boone hasn't been healthy since the season started. So that's the reason why you still see him out there. Because the best offensive line is with him. Him as being Welsh, offensive guard.
Right. And then we got Terry spread the field. Now we'll open up the run game simple. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and I agree. Going out of 3 wide receivers and running out of that formation, I think is helpful. I think what they need to do, though, and this is where James Butler would have been really helpful, and maybe he will be in late October against the mighty Gophers, and that is, run out of that, but have a more physical runner to do it. I'm not dissing Akron by any stretch, but, if you can have a physical running back when you're in a spread and you spread out the defense, you'll have a chance to really pound the ball. I think that's what they need to do right now.
Yeah, Tom says, do we think the new O-line coach is the issue? No, as we kind of said, it's more so injuries at this point, and a lack of execution by everybody out there that's kind of led them here. But I want to get to the next one from Steve, because this hits on something I kind of wrote about in my story today to get the running game going. Steve says, you need to audible hot routes and pass on blitzes. Now, the interesting thing is they kind of already have this built into the system, and they do it. Sometimes it's straight Nate Stanley audibles. Sometimes it's called run-pass options, where you get to the line of scrimmage, and based on the read that you see, if it's more advantageous to run the ball, you run the ball. If it's more advantageous to pass the ball, you pass the ball. I was shown that this year. There were some times this past week where neither was an option, and that sounds strange, but there's 7 guys in the box, there's 2 receivers to the right, and there's man coverage. 7 guys on the box with 6 run guys. Iowa most years might take that and try to take the 7-on-6 and see what happens. With where the run game is right now, that became a pass play, and I don't argue Nate Stanley on that right now. Mm-hmm. The problem is your better option there is a 2-on-2 coverage where Matt Vandenberg can only block one defender, and you're leaving Nick Easley to go 1-on-1, and the pass went for like 0 yards or 1 yard. I've never seen a run play option before we get to the point where there is no good option, but the struggles of Iowa's offense right now has pretty much made it where a defense can align against you and take that away. So, Steve, you're right. That is something they should be doing, but it's not always necessarily there, and that's part of the reason why they need to get the run game going. When things were going a little bit better the first 3 games, there were a lot of plays where they did the RPO, straight audible, into a pass screen, and that was how they got a lot of those touchdowns from about the 7-yard line or the 8-yard line. They've done it in the past. It's just not there right now, just because no one's respecting the run, and the pass guy and the receivers really aren't necessarily getting open down the field all that consistently.
They are facing a lot of blitzes, more than I can recall in the past. And the other thing is, those quick screens, when you do it against Michigan State, it doesn't work because they have such good tackling defensive backs. They always have. And that's just, so they tried it. It didn't really work. I think it's something to learn for the future. They won't face another team defensively like this till maybe Ohio State, not until November. Certainly Wisconsin will be right up there. But so I think they've got time to work on this. It's just it's a process, and it's hard to swallow the patience, but you kind of need to.
Dan wants them to run the ball, which I think that's what they want to do too. They just kind of can't do it right now. A couple more questions on the overthrows again, and if that will solve the passing game or not. It's not really solving the passing game. It's just, I think it's easy to see, and that's why everybody gravitates towards it. It's not the biggest issue on the offense. Ball security for Stanley is his, and they got to start running the ball better. They do need to hit more of those deep passes, but there's things higher up on the priority list to solve for that offense.
He hit a couple of deep passes the other day. The one thing is he's not hitting them when the receiver just finally breaks. However, again, the receiver sometimes needs to catch up to it too. I mean, that's happened in the past as well. They're young receivers, except for Vandenberg. Some of them are straight overthrows, but you don't have a high percentage of those plays either. They don't hit every single one of them, not even in the NFL. So he's still a young quarterback. It's going to take time, but hey, he's got 12 touchdowns and 1 interception. In each of the last 2 years, C.J. Beathard had 17 touchdowns.
He's completing still north of 60% of his passes.
It's right around 60.
Yeah. So
first-year starters.
Those numbers, you tell any coach in America that's what your quarterback's going to give you, they'll sign up for it after 5 games in a heartbeat.
Yeah. All right, just a couple more. Michelle says, "Don't be so predictable." The running game is always predictable, and when it doesn't work, it looks bad. So running game is always predictable. When you see them hand the ball off to the right, they go to the right. When they go to the left, they go to the left. It's just when they stopped and they do it again and again that drives you nuts. Well, if they were successful, it would feel fine. So that's the one problem with the running game.
Yeah, that's what it is. Hey, Day, good to see you joining in and watching us. Jericho does not agree with us at all on Nate Stanley. Thinks they're predictable, and he showed him that he's not starter capable. I would, go rewatch that tape. He does a lot of really good things. His decision-making has been very, very good this whole season. That and accuracy is hard to teach a quarterback, and for the most part, Nate's been good on that. I know the response is going to be the deep ball, but he's good on the short and the underneath routes. We've covered the deep ball kind of ad nauseum. Here on this one, there's just some people that aren't going to be happy with him until he connects on more of these deep balls. And I just think you're overlooking a whole lot of good things that a kid's showing at a base-level foundation for what he can do as a quarterback and our reasons to like where he can be going forward.
He's like a point guard right now who, is averaging about 13 points a game and about 2 turnovers a game. But he's probably shooting 30% from 3, but he's capable of hitting it because he's pretty accurate and you just let him shoot, let him shoot, and he'll make them. He's still a pretty new guy.
And Colleen says, shout out to the victims in Las Vegas. Puts things in perspective very fast. Yeah, I think everybody's hearts and thoughts went out to everybody there, and it's a shame that mass shootings continue to be such a prevalent problem in this country. And 3 times in 16 or 18 months, we've had the worst one in American history. Keep getting topped and topped and topped.
Yeah, the Liberty High School principal is there. Yeah. My daughter's principal. So is that it for us?
We got one more coming in. Jerry says he thinks the weak link of the defense is 41. What are our opinions? I think the linebacker play has gotten better over the last year. At this point last year, playing at the edge and the outside is where they would get exposed, and Penn State did a fantastic job with it. It wasn't as big of an issue this time with Penn State as it was in the past, or I would say any game for this season so far. To this point, I think they need to solidify safety. When that's a lot like quarterback. When there's a mistake made at safety, it's the last line of defense that stands out really big and ends up being a big play. And that's it's not as much as it was last year, but it's still a little bit too much of an issue, I think, than what you would want to see from Iowa at that position. And the return of Snyder could probably very well solve that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, Chad says the ceiling on Stanley is pretty darn high in his opinion, and I agree.
Yeah.
So. Well, thanks everyone for your comments and watching. We appreciate it as always, and we will talk to you Saturday morning.
Yeah, Saturday morning, Iowa, Illinois. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your week.